How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Magazine Live. Today is December 14th, 2022, and we're about to get into news and notes. I'm joined by my co-host, Nolan. How goes it, Nolan?
Chris, I love life. I love life. There's very little to complain about. We're getting closer and closer to hyper-Bitcoinization. And how do we know we're getting closer to hyper-Bitcoinization? The signs are always that the energy sector is going to turn towards Bitcoin and become calibrated, orchestrated, oriented around Bitcoin incentives. It might seem like a small story, but go to Japan, go to the largest city in the world, one of the most sophisticated energy infrastructures on Earth, a place where I think even the creator of the Bitcoin system, Satoshi Nakamoto, took the name Satoshi Nakamoto, a Japanese name, in order to speak to the world in the financial crisis, that Japan was a little ahead on what was happening, the central bank failures, but also the advancement of energy infrastructure. They had some of the most interesting nuclear power. And now what's happening there? Largest city in the world, Tokyo, their publicly held state-owned Tokyo Electric Power Company is going to use its excess pool to mine Bitcoin, to use it, as we've all thought of, as a load balancing battery. So unbelievably, the country that will probably experience hyper-Bitcoinization first, because their central bank is the dumbest in the world and the most corrupted and worthy of derision. The ones who invented all of this financial manipulation. Their grid, on the other hand, is living in the future already. And you're going to hear more about that future if you come to Miami, May 18th to 20th, for the end of Bitcoin winter, for a show all about energy literacy. We pioneered in a lot of ways through Bitcoin meetups an understanding of cryptography and an understanding of privacy and an understanding of financial literacy. Bitcoin and this P2P learning culture has been at the heart of what is sometimes called the rabbit hole. The rabbit hole is really a reading list. It's sharing information. It's literacy. It's a lens to look on the world. And we think our audience, the ones who watch this show, are amongst the most financially literate in the world. And we're going to make sure you're amongst the most energy literate in the world. And our show in Miami is going to be all about that. We're going to have some of the most important energy players in the world talking about Bitcoin, talking about how they're integrating Bitcoin into their systems. And slowly we're going to push it to the actual center of the entire world's energy conversation. And it's starting in Miami. Going to be an energy show. We got the finance stuff, we got the money, we got the Wall Street, we got the people who are rich who like the Bitcoin. That's all great. We got the superstars and the athletes and the influencers, but we're really interested in the energy companies. We're really interested in all of them being on a Bitcoin standard first, and you'll see how close we are, right? It's as close as the biggest city in the world mining Bitcoin. It's pretty close. We're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah, very exciting. Well, some countries get it, like Japan, others do not. So Germany, who is still living in the Stone Age, what I mean by that is they're struggling to keep the power on for their country, and energy prices are spiking, not just there, but in the EU in general, or Europe in general. Is they're calling for global regulation of the crypto industry. It's funny that they're trying to call for regulation, but they can't even keep the lights on. So I don't know how they plan on regulating something when they can't even participate in the network or even just keep the lights on to regulate in the first place. They say that their top priority is to regulate the cryptocurrency industry globally, and it's to protect consumers, prevent money laundering, and preserve financial stability. That's pretty rich coming from a country that is not even energy secure, probably not going to be food secure in the coming months because of the issues with the lack of energy. Nolan, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, their problems look like they're going to figure out their global generational transfer of wealth just electrical bills for a couple of winters. They might wipe out the entire generation of savings from one policy mistake. And you think of it in terms of just one policy mistake, but it's a huge problem. I mean, if you really orient your entire energy policy around the feelings of a teenage girl and whether or not she's happy about it and it makes her positive and ambitious about the future or not, if you do that, if you use that as your measuring stick, you're going to end up in this world. And then you're going to come at us and say, we also want to regulate the financial industry. It doesn't matter what kind of idiocy the same power structures have created in other realms, which you can demonstratively measure now when energy is being so inefficiently used. So I think they go hand in hand, and Bitcoin is going to help bring the energy markets in line with what we should all be seeing in financial markets, which is something that makes sense to people.
Definitely. Well, our biggest story of the day is talking about Binance. Do you want to break that story for us, Nolan?
Yeah, this is lots of outflows. It looks like 5.7 billion have fled the platform in the last 24 hours, and there's rumors of executives and rumors of other stuff that would start pushing it up into the legal sphere. I don't want to start any FUD, absolutely, but we got to pay attention to the outflows, and we got to pay attention to what people are saying. So we have no special insight whatsoever, just reporting on anxiety in the market and why it's there.
Yeah, and I will note that CZ actually sent out a tweet saying like it's good with these outflows. It's good to stress test exchanges. Referring to himself. Obviously, we're in the midst of the crypto winter or bear market right now, Bitcoin bear market, and he said that it seems that he's trying to quell any of the panic and say things are fine. I think it's a good thing, and I think the one thing I will caveat is we're not trying to FUD Binance, but if it's not your keys, not your coins. You do not want to end up like the countless things we've seen this year of Three Arrows Capital, Celsius, Voyager, BlockFi, FTX. I'm not saying Binance is going to have a similar fate, but you do not want to just, that's a risk that I'm not willing to take. Maybe some people are, but just don't come like crying when if the exchange goes under for whatever reason, or they get into financial hardship and then they have to halt withdrawals. You do not want to be caught off sides in a position like that. So that's why take your Bitcoin and self-custody yourself. That's just my 2 cents. Well, it seems the Lightning Network's growing, not just in the capacity of the Lightning Network, but in terms of the channels that are used to make payments. What do I mean by this? So someone was using the Lightning Network, not just for micropayments, like many people say, micropayments, sending a few sats here and there, 5 sats, a couple small micropayments if they're not large. Well, someone was decided to test the network, and they bought a watch over the $10,000 or 10,000 Swiss franc amount, so over 10,000 Swiss francs over the Lightning Network. So it's very fascinating. Obviously, that's over right now at the current cost, over a half a Bitcoin was spent over the Lightning Network. Obviously, the channel had to be very large in order to do that, or the channel that was open between the two parties, but very, very fascinating. Nolan, anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I love that 10,000 mark, because 10,000 Swiss francs is roughly in the $10,000, 10,000 euro range. It's not exactly the same, but I think it's around there. And I bet you that is their reporting requirement for the whole regime of anti-money laundering and anti-terrorism financing, which is a complete fraud. The regime itself has been a complete failure in its history. They fail to stop any money laundering. Their entire plan is to censor transactions above $10,000 and to have reporting on transactions that are above $10,000. They rarely catch anyone. What have we given up in order to comply with the global FATF mandate? We've given up Hong Kong already. We just said enough with Hong Kong. Extradition of mainland of Hong Kong nationals to mainland China to face Chinese law was actually based on the argument created by FATF, the Parisian entity, about naming and shaming people who don't adhere to their system for money laundering. And that's what the governor of Hong Kong used and cited every single time for the reason that they wanted that extradition possible to mainland China. So we've already given up Hong Kong as far as it being a free market, rule of law jurisdiction in order to comply. Global compliance with FATF is so important, right? So we've already given up Hong Kong for global compliance with FATF. We've got multiple other industries. Now the entire possibility of Bitcoin being threatened, the whole potential optimistic worldview that we can usher in with Bitcoin being threatened by bureaucratic compliance with this ridiculous thing that has actually never even caught anyone, right? Remember, they don't catch anyone. Go check it out. It's unreal. Very few prosecutions in history because of this. You can go buy watches for over $10,000. You can buy art for over $10,000. You can buy all kinds of things. You can run ATM machines and get around it. None of these people have to report. But I guess we do, according to them. And we already see. We've got, what's her name? The crazy one that I don't think the joke is funny anymore. Like, it's kind of played out that people did it. So I don't recommend calling her Pocahontas any longer at all. I always say that Elizabeth Warren at this point deserves just use her normal name. That's okay, and criticize her normal things. We don't have to talk about how she lied about being a Native American, and then also was so stupid that she thought when she got the genetic test that it proved that she was like 0.03% for a minute. She actually published it as proof that she was before she found out that it meant that she had literally statistically no connection. So she, we're not going to make fun of her for those reasons. That's not funny anymore. We're just going to stick with the facts. And what are the facts? What is she out there pushing for? It's more of this FATF business, right? It's more of this same extension of all the provisions of basically the global deputization of the financial sector in order that the police who are actually supposed to be out there looking for money launderers don't have to do their job. They can just tell the banks to do it. And now they think they can just come and tell us Bitcoiners to do it. So that's where we're at with them. And there isn't really much room for negotiation left. It's either we build things to get around them or we listen to what Elizabeth Warren is proposing. And what is it exactly?
Yeah, so she's proposing the Digital Asset Anti-Money Laundering Act. I know that as a mouthful. So it just dropped earlier this morning, basically saying like, hey, you have to KYC yourself on even mobile wallets and, as they say, hosted wallets or unhosted wallets if you're doing it yourself. It's to develop a risk for anti-money laundering programs, to block persons using the software for cryptocurrencies in general. Basically, there is a whole bunch of things that you basically need to KYC yourself. You need to report to the government. You need to do all these different things. And it is to protect us from money laundering and crime and all these various things. I think this bill is a gross violation of privacy and the Constitution. And the funniest thing of it all is like she was trying to frame it like, oh, this is coming after FTX. This is to protect the consumers. But nowhere in that mentions any of the gross corporate negligence that FTX had. It's just basically like throwing all these things at the wall to hope that they stick. And yeah, I think it's just very, very funny. That's the old system trying to regulate it.
Luckily, she is so off-putting and repelling as a human that, of course, no one will follow her cause in any substantial manner. But that she's out making these arguments at this point in the game, I think leaves a lot of questions around motivations in her part and what's going on with all of that. But I think it's great that, again, we're going to see contrast. We've got that going on at the same time as we've got Warren Davidson, the congressman, pushing for the Keep Your Coins Act, which protects self-custody. So we've got legislation that would safeguard what it is we're promoting here, financial literacy in its purest form, in its most native form, something you'll hear a lot about in Miami, of course. We're going to continue to create a lot of content that frames self-custody, that underlines its importance, and definitely May 18th to 20th in Miami, there's going to be lots of stuff about self-custody. We've really got the welcome mat out to all the providers of those services. We hope that everyone who is involved in your financial literacy, in education, and in promoting your self-sovereignty is going to be there. We want to create like the modern private investment bank in all the services, but for our attendees, that basically if you come and meet all the people and service providers at our show, it's as good as having the best private bank in the world, because you're going to have all these services that, hopefully, if put together, can help you get sovereignty, financial sovereignty in your life. That's a big part of what we try to organize and what we're trying to put together. So folks like Warren Davidson fit in exactly. And the whole debate right now around what we see, even the news about Binance that we mentioned earlier, and the debates around the appropriateness of these institutions and how good they are at stopping any of this stuff. And right now we've got, the hearings on FTX going on, and Representative Tom Emmer, I think, really landing a pretty strong punch on the SEC, coming out and saying the SEC, should be held accountable for the FTX collapse. And in their defense, the SEC tried to say that like the old system can regulate the old system. And luckily, we're having all of these conversations at once. And that, Senator Elizabeth Warren would come around with this story in the midst of everything that's going on, I think, puts probably the biggest clown nose on anyone out there today. She would get the Clown World Moscow Time official trophy of the day if we were giving it out today.
Yeah. And I want to note, like, Nolan, I know in the other episode you're saying Bankman-Fried or whatever, with the runaway CZ doesn't have as good or as easy of a time, portraying that he's going to rug pull you. Well, the Keep Your Coins Act is KYC Act, which I thought was very clever. Some of the clever naming tricks, the Patriot Act, the CARES Act, all these different things. I think the KYC Act rolls off the tongue, goes right in. Everyone knows what it is. Where, Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Marshall proposing the Damnal Act, like, that doesn't work. It's not going to go through. It's dead on arrival. So
the simulation will definitely prefer the cleverness of the KYC Act. If everything does bend towards the most entertaining outcomes.
The KYC Act, Keep Your Coins Act. I think that's clever. It works. Maybe even I wish they put more emphasis in a lot of stuff that goes in these bills. But hey, the naming convention, it's clever from time to time. I think that helps it with passing it, obviously. Well, yesterday, Martin Shkreli was saying that he received a verified message from Hal Finney. So to give some context for our listeners, Hal Finney is technically the first transaction, or the first transaction from Satoshi to Hal was 10 Bitcoin, and it was the first transaction between two different individuals. Obviously, Satoshi had received not just the Genesis block is locked and unspendable, but he had minted other coins. But the first time a transaction occurred on the Bitcoin blockchain back in 2009 was from Satoshi to Hal. And so he got a verified message from Hal Finney's key. Obviously, Hal passed away in 2013, tragically, due to ALS, unfortunately. But the message said, Paul Leroux is Satoshi. In the panic and confusion, people were like, wait, is this real? Whatever. Cryptographically verified that this is actually one of Hal's keys. So that everyone's like, oh, crap, is Hal back from the dead? Is it one of his kids? We don't know. So at first, it was signed from Hal Finney's key using a signature that wasn't around when Hal was alive. So Greg Maxwell, one of the early core developers, Bitcoin core developers on the project, was basically saying the signature type that they used was different or not around when Hal was then. So even though it was Hal's key, it was at a newer software of Bitcoin. So meaning that someone had either transferred Hal's key to a new address type, and then they're able to sign with that new address type. So getting a little technical there. Second, Hal's kids sold a lot of his Bitcoin when he was fighting ALS to pay for a lot of operations and a lot of treatments in order to try and get him better, unfortunately. So in the process of selling the Bitcoin, someone could have access to those new private keys in order to make this signature. So not from Hal. It might not be from one of his kids. I don't think it's one of his kids spoofing the world. And then lastly, Paul Leroux was spelled wrong in the message. So Paul Leroux, it's a French spelling or French pronunciation, but it was spelled improperly. There was supposed to be a space between le and row, and it was spelled improperly. So I just think that this is kind of a troll. Someone's using one of Hal's keys to spoof it. Obviously, everyone was like, oh my God, this is real. I also wanted to note Paul Leroux is a programmer, and also he was criminally charged with, I forget what it was. He was brought into jail in 2013, and then he finally got convicted in June of 2020, and he's currently serving in jail. So it's most likely not Paul sending a signature from jail. I mean, stranger things have been known to happen, but
let's remember who did start the rumor. It's Martin Shkreli, who went to jail for being a scammer. Now, I'm a fan of the humor of the guy, and definitely a person who had time for the Shkreli SBF conversation about prison and what that would be like. And I'm sure Paul could join in on that conversation. And I don't know if anyone caught that when Shkreli did tell, no, sorry, it wasn't. It was Do Kwon. Prison's not so bad, buddy. Prison's not so bad. The Luna guy. So, speaking of prison and all that kind of stuff and what's going on with SBF, so first of all, you heard it on this show first in the world, and it's going to be one of the best shows going forward. When we mentioned that Caroline was out of jail and it meant she probably had a plea deal, and we talked to you about the lawyers that SBF had hired. He hired Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyer. And then I said Caroline had hired Clinton's lawyer, and it's going to be a Clinton and Epstein legal battle, the one we've all been waiting for, maybe. Maybe it's there. Maybe we have Samson Mao, who pulled out a bit of the initial testimony from SBF, and he highlighted at the end that the congressional record, right, that I am for the most of my adult life, I've been really sad, right? So he's out there saying he's really sad. Right? And remember, Epstein was really sad too, and it's really we should really feel bad for these guys. It must have been hard, really hard for the guy, right? Oh, the gentle little fella. So the good news is we're going to continue to offer that frame. Like I said, we were the first probably show out there that said this is going to be great. We're going to see media manipulation and psyops and all kinds of great stuff at a level we've never seen out front. This is going to be a great fight and should do more to reveal some of the stuff behind the curtain, which is all great fodder for Bitcoiners, of course. If we're going to destroy the system, we got to know what's going out and expose it for what it is in order to offer that contrast to the world, that the dark corners where these people hide and the hooded places where they have to go are in contrast to the bright and optimistic future that we're offering, that you're going to hear a ton about May 18th to 20th in Miami at Bitcoin 2023, a place where really we offer the only optimistic view of the future, where there's no doom scrolling at our event, right? It's nothing but the best content about energy being mastered and the utopia we can create in the way we eat, the way we live with each other, the way we interact, and how we can bring the whole world together again. I always say, right, it's not you, it's USD, right? That's the problem we have, right? It's not you. It's not you. All the anxiety, it's not you. It's USD. And at our event, we are a collection of folks who have broken away from that system and are absolutely optimistic about the future and are watching events unfold and the world rushing towards a Bitcoin standard as the clown world collapses before our eyes. One of the best shows we can watch, right? We love it. It's so much fun.
Definitely. It is enjoyable to watch, and we'd love for you to watch it with us down in Miami. You can go to b.tc/conference and use the code BMLive to get 10% off the tickets. That's a wrap for today. Nolan, anything else you want to add?
No, getting ready for Christmas around here. We got some snow. And yeah, we're just, having a great time watching all this stuff go down.
I agree. Thanks, everyone, for watching. We will catch you tomorrow. Have a good one. Peace.